All right, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar to talk about the various lead distribution logics that are available in the lead system. We'll cover each of them at a fairly high level and take a look at the changes that may be present in the UI, depending on the distribution logic that is selected. So before we jump into that, we just want to really make sure everybody's on the same page as to what distribution logic is. So if we look at an infographic on how a lead matches to a buyer in the system, when a lead or call or ping come into the system, doesn't matter which, the lead system works on an exclusionary basis. So any partner that is not active, any partner that does not have available funds, and any partner that does not have a matching filter set are excluded. And so what we are only talking about here is in step 2, when there are multiple partners, more specifically, more partners that can get the lead than there are spots available. How do we sort these multiple matches? And so the idea is that there are different end goals. Some companies may want to route it to their best revenue scenario, while other companies want to have more of a hands-on approach and be able to prioritize their partners the way that they see fit at that given point in time. Still others may just want something simple that round robins them. And then when we're talking about multiple matches, we may be talking about an exclusive or a shared lead. But ultimately, that's the goal here, is to talk about the different sorting options at this step 2 to determine what the matching partners are. So if we go to boberdoo's lead distribution logic page, you'll see we do have 6 that are built out standards. We have some variations that we could always get into, and we can always customize logic if you do have that use case. So first we'll take a look at priority. This is really where distribution logic started. And then we'll move on to best revenue scenario, best price, and weighted logic. If we have time, we'll cover waterfall and earnings per lead in a little bit of detail as well. But so first, we'll just talk about what the goal is for each of these. So when there is a match, multiple matches here, and you are on a priority distribution, we are looking at the priority setting in the individual filter set to determine the matching partner. And so it goes by priority, meaning that the higher the priority, the more they are prioritized. So again, if you have 3 matches, Grace has a priority of 10. Brett and Emily both have a priority of 5. It will go to Grace every time. The important thing there is that it is an absolute ranking. So as long as Grace's filter set matches, she will get the lead. Priority, the priority defaults to a 5 in the lead system. And if you do not change that priority, that is how most clients use a round robin. So in a round robin, it is just going to the partner that's had the longest time since receiving the last lead. The next we'll cover is best price or price. In this case, this is typically done in ping post, but can also be in a direct post. The system is looking for the single best price. So when we go back to our matching infographic here, we are looking at the single best price, regardless of exclusivity or not. So in this case, if Grace was at 10, Brett was at 5, and Emily was at 2, Grace would get it every time that the filter set matched. The next we have is best revenue scenarios. This is the default logic of the new lead types that are added for quite some time now. The idea here is to maximize the revenue of that incoming ping or lead post. So when we go back to our matching logic here, scenarios, evaluate the best exclusive buyer against the sum of the non-exclusive buyers or other exclusive buyers. So in this example, the ping comes in, let's say Grace is exclusive, Emily and Brett are non-exclusive. Let's say Grace is at $20. Emily and Brett are both buying non-exclusive leads at $12 each. If a ping or a lead comes in and it matches to all three of them, the system will evaluate the best exclusive at 20 with Grace against the sum of the non-exclusive leads. In this case, 12 plus 12 is 24. So in a best revenue scenario, this system will then distribute the lead to Emily and Brett non-exclusively because $24 is greater than $20, which is the best exclusive price. Now the next lead comes in, let's say in this case, Brett is not a matching partner because it's out of his geo. In this case, we're evaluating the best exclusive, which again is Grace at 20, against the sum of the non-exclusive leads. In this case, it is only Emily at 12. So then the lead will be sold exclusively. From a lead seller's perspective, this is typically the goal is to sell or return, or excuse me, to maximize your revenue. And it also allows you flexibility in selling exclusive leads and non-exclusive leads because you don't need to have full non-exclusive coverage in order to offer that non-exclusive product. It allows you to take advantage of that if the opportunity presents itself based on your given demand. Coming back to the distribution logic here, we're going to cover weighted logic next. Now, weighted logic is an evolution of the priority distribution. So if you'll remember with priority, it is an absolute match. If Grace is at 10 and Brett is at 5, Grace will get it every single time. With the weighted logic distribution, the idea here is that you don't want it to be absolute. You want some relativity to it. So the common use case here is you have two clients of significantly different volume, commitments or demand. So one partner, let's say they want 1,000 leads a month, another partner only wants 100. In a priority-based distribution, if you set, the 100 target or the 100 lead buyer at a priority of 6, they will get every lead till they hit their 100, and then the next 1,000 leads will go to your other partner. Conversely, if you put them on a round robin, both at priority of 5, it would go $100 lead buyer, 1,000 lead buyer, 100 lead buyer, 1,000 lead buyer in a round robin until the 100 leads was met, and then this partner would receive their other 900 leads in a row. When we look at the weighted logic, the idea is that we introduce another sorting logic on top of the priority. So with weighted logic, priority is still the first determining factor. But then there is a target that is introduced into the filter set. A target is simply just that. It is a soft limit. So you can go over a target, but you cannot go over a limit. And so in this case, instead of setting the limits at 100 and 1,000, we set the targets at 100,000. And the system calculates your minimum, your lead distribution percentage for each filter set on each incoming lead. And the final sorting logic amongst the multiple matches is to deliver the lead to whoever has the lowest distribution percentage. Now, what this means is if we look back at that infographic, if we play out a handful of leads here, lead 1 comes in and goes to All-Star Insurance. We calculate their distribution percentage, in this case of being 1 divided by 1,000. The next lead comes in, first choice is at 0, and All-Star is at something greater than 0 for the monthly distribution percentage. So the next lead then goes to first choice. Now we look at the third lead that comes in. First choice distribution percentage is now 1%. All-Stars is less than 1%. So the lead then goes to All-Star. Fourth lead, same calculation. All-Star is still at a lower distribution percentage. So again, the lead goes to the All-Star. Now, over time, what you will end up with is an approximate 10-to-1 relationship where every lead that first choice receives, All-Star will receive 10. Now, it's worth reiterating here that that is all based upon those filter sets matches. So if you have a partner and you're thinking about this distribution, and you have a partner that says, hey, I want 1,000 mortgage leads a month. Well, if they're not eligible for 1,000 mortgage leads coming in because they only want loan value of 500,000 plus, you're not going to be able to deliver those leads on the same ratio. It's always based on both of those filter sets matching, because again, we're going through this initial distribution logic every time. So I'll cover these two just more in a high level. Waterfall came out of the payday personal loan space. Essentially, instead of pinging that information, partial information out to a partner, you actually attempt to deliver the lead to that partner in a priority waterfall so that you attempt higher prices before lower prices. There's two use cases, personal loans obviously still being one, but the important thing here is that in the response, there is a redirect URL. So we do have other clients that can repurpose this logic for doing something like selling clicks, as an example. The earnings per lead calculation is specific to inbound phone routing. So if you do route calls, this is a way essentially to maximize your opportunity, which is that incoming call. Essentially, we are calculating the revenue per attempt for each filter set in your system. And when there are multiple matches, we are sorting it by the filter set that has the highest revenue per attempt. So things like duration or ring timeouts will punish those buyers that do not or are not as successful as those that do not have those restrictions on there. So, the primary use case there, you're selling to a buyer, a call buyer on no minimum duration at $50. You have another call buyer that is paying you $100, but they have a 1 minute minimum duration. Based off of the expected earnings per call, let's say that $100 lead buyer only lasts 1 minute on the call, 20 out of 100 calls. Their revenue per attempt is $20. So we would then sort and send the call to the $50 lead buyer, even though they were willing only to pay 50, whereas another partner was willing to pay 100 because of that expected revenue. So again, if you do calls, it is worth exploring as it allows you to optimize your call routing more automated as opposed to manual changes. So coming back here, we're going to go to the system to just take a look at some of the options because there are some UI differences. Again, we're going to go into this demo system and just take a look at some of the filter sets. So first we have just the best price filter set. This is all independent of Ping Post, meaning you can do it with Ping Post, but it is not required. If you are selling at a fixed price or directly to retail buyers at $10, this is the price that is considered, in the multiple matches. So when a lead comes in, if this filter set matches, we're going to use $10 and compare that against the other lead price of the other filter sets. We will compare that $10 against any dynamic bids returned from a lead buyer as well. You will also notice there is the priority setting here that is used in conjunction with best price. So for clients that sell to a lot of retail partners that typically have consistent pricing, hey, all my leads are $10. If that is the case, you may have situations where you want to prioritize ties. So, hey, this is a very good lead buyer. They have a low refund rate. They provide us with status dispositions. If they match and at that lead price, I want to make sure that they get that lead. Or conversely, this partner refunds a lot of leads. And so I only want to get them the lead if there's not another matching partner at that same price. But if there is, I want that to go to somebody else. Now, best price is typically used in an exclusive lead system. And by that, I mean at the source settings, how many times is a lead going to be distributed? So this is where variations and some complexities can come into play. So in the partners per lead, at one, we are only looking and evaluating essentially exclusive filter set versus exclusive filter set because there is no non-exclusive filter set. The lead can only be sold one time. And so that's a pretty basic setup, just like the filter set that we looked at. Now, if we look at something like this filter set of website with 3, now when that system comes in, we are still looking at the single best price and using that to route the lead or to return the bid back to the vendor. So if we look at a case where we have a Ping Post lead buyer or Ping Post vendor sending you leads, and I'm a lead seller that wants to make a 20% margin. If I am based on best price, I am looking at the single best price. Let's say it's $10. I am carving out that 20%, and then I'm returning $8 back to the vendor as my represented bid. Now, those filter sets, if they're non-exclusive or have none in exclusivity, when that lead posts in that you win for $8, the lead then may be routed 3 times to those non-exclusive partners, but they are not considered in the bid returned back to the vendor. So this logic is typically not used in any sort of competitive vertical. The reason being, and what we'll spend a little bit of time on now, is convincing you that you want to pay your vendors as much as you possibly can for a lead. We have a lot of clients that say, I know what the market is, and so I want to be able to return a specific bid for a specific type of lead. You can always set that up. We have things like return best cost. I would say, as somebody who's been in this business now for 14 or 15 years, handling ping posts, there is an incredible amount of variation. And what worked today or even last hour does not necessarily work moving forward. And the reason is, if you think about ping post, is that each lead is decisioned in real time. And so when that lead comes in, doesn't matter if you're using boberdoo or not, once Grace hits her daily limit, for example, the economics, if Emily and Brett are significantly less than Grace in terms of what they pay, the bids that you're returning back after Grace hits her daily limit is significantly less than, or significantly more than with her in the revenue calculation than without. So back to the best revenue scenario. The goal here is to return the highest bid back to the vendor that you can. The reason for that is that gives you the best chance to win the lead. And because you have the ability to right price your leads, or as a lead buyer, adjust your filter sets so that you are returning a bid that backs out for your cost per acquisition. The goal in scenarios then gives you the best chance to win a lead that you can sell profitably in real time. And so that's kind of the important thing that I try to make sure everybody understands is your goal is to take us a margin, I won't say small or big, but a margin so that if you accept that lead from the seller or buy that lead from the seller, you have a real-time buyer that's going to take that lead. Post rejects aside. Now, the goal here, again, returning the highest price that you can back to the vendor, giving yourself the best lead to make some money. Or in your case of a lead buyer, to win a lead that closes or backs out for your cost per acquisition. So if we go back into the filter set here, we are still going to be dealing with lead price. But now, instead of just looking at priority, which is not in the filter set when your best revenue scenario is the lead type, we are looking at exclusivity, none are exclusive, to determine the best revenue scenario. So again, this can work with dynamic buyers or direct post buyers. We're just going to look at, again, that same $10 lead buyer. Now, if this is an exclusive filter set, when a lead comes in or a ping comes in, the system is going to evaluate this $10 against any other exclusive filter sets. So if there is one that is $12, this filter set no longer comes into play. If there's the next one is at $9, this filter set is in play. And then compare that against the sum of the matching filter sets with exclusivity equals none, up to the maximum partners per lead. So again, in this website, up to 3 times. If there are 5 matching filter sets and they are all at none, we are going to build the best revenue scenario from the highest 3. If there's a matching exclusive filter set, then we're going to compare the highest 3, exclusivity equals none, against that exclusive buyer. This is a demo system. You typically don't see things like 14 or even really 5 in a lot of systems. Most of our clients, I think, would be between 1 and 3 or 4. Again, depending on the lead type and the value proposition of the clients. So this is where, from a seller's perspective, if you're working with somebody that is dealing in revenue scenarios, you can, figure out how many times they're willing to distribute the lead so that you can have different sources, return different bids. And then from a lead buyer, same situation. Multiple sources allow you to bid on those different quote unquote legs of the lead to help them in building the best revenue scenario. Now, the other reason I'm here to talk about revenue scenario is what happens if all does not go according to plan. So that is essentially what happens when the best revenue scenario falls apart. So again, let's just take a ping post example. The ping comes in, the system builds the best revenue scenario, and then returns the bid back to the vendor. Then the post comes in. We then are always recalculating this best revenue scenario. So we're calculating the best revenue scenario on the post and distributing it according to that best revenue scenario. So bringing this back to a case where the best revenue scenario is an exclusive partner. The post comes in. Grace is the exclusive lead buyer. We attempt to post the lead to Grace, so we move on to step 3. And then we are waiting for the success response from Grace before we return that success response back to the vendor. Now, in this case, Grace rejects the lead, the post that you're attempting. Duplicate, let's just say. Now, the system recalculates your best revenue scenario at this point. So it kind of moves back to step 2, recalculates the next best revenue scenario, and says, is this new scenario greater than the bid that I returned back to the vendor? So at this point, we are ignoring any margin because you have returned a bid back to the vendor. Let's say it was $8. The system is just now trying to sell the lead for $8 or more. If it cannot sell that lead for $8 or more, then we return the post reject response back to the vendor of unmatched. So in the next revenue scenario, let's say there is another exclusive buyer at $9. So when we recalculate it, we then find a new filter set that matches at $9. We then advance to step 3 again, and then route the lead to that next best revenue scenario. If they post reject it, back to the drawing board. Step 2, recalculate the next best revenue, and then sell it again if it is higher than the bid returned back to the vendor. So that helps you, again, maximize your revenue, attempt to sell the lead profitably as much as possible. But if the next buyer in your system is at $5 and you have returned an $8 bid, at this point, we then return that error response or reject response back to the vendor saying, we can't buy this lead. Then if that vendor is using Boberdoo and on best revenue scenario, their system would recalculate the next best revenue scenario to figure out to whom that lead should be sold. Now, the next use case that we cover gets a little bit more complicated because we are talking about a non-exclusive delivery. So the ping comes in. Now, let's just say it matches. Great. Emily and Brett are non-exclusive. Grace is exclusive. Again, Grace is at $10. Emily and Brett are at $6 each. Sorry. So the bid is returned back to the vendor. Again, let's say it was 20%. So that would be $9.60 returned back to the vendor. So the post comes in and we attempt to deliver the lead to the non-exclusive scenario. So with scenarios, again, pings are sent out simultaneously, posts are done sequentially. And by that, I mean, we attempt to post to the first non-exclusive filter set. And once we get the success response, then we attempt the next non-exclusive scenario. Now, you may see this could cause some issues because what happens if the lead comes in and you deliver the lead to Emily and she accepts the lead, but then you go to deliver to Brett the next non-exclusive revenue scenario and Brett rejects the lead. Now your Boberdoo system will recalculate the next best revenue scenario. And at this point, because you are pot committed, meaning that you've already sold, got a confirmation from Emily, and then returned that success response back to the vendor, the system is just trying to sell the lead at whatever price it can because it's trying to offset any potential losses. Now, if the lead comes in and the bid's returned, the post comes in and we attempt Emily first in the non-exclusive and she rejects the lead, let's say as a duplicate. Now the lead system recalculates the best revenue scenario, but the best revenue scenario is now Grace exclusively at $10. That $10 is still higher than the $9.60 returned back to the vendor. And so your system, instead of selling it non-exclusively, sells it to the exclusive buyer for $10. So post rejects are very important when it comes to scenarios. And so if you do deal with somebody with a lot of post rejects, we do have options called fake post price priority that can be added to your filter sets, which would allow you then to say, if this partner matches, I want to make sure that this partner is attempted first because they post reject a lot of leads. That gives my system an opportunity to sell the lead exclusively at a profit versus having it go to somebody, a non-exclusive buyer that accepts it, maybe because they get leads sent via email, and then attempting a non-exclusive buyer that may post reject the lead. Because you've already sold the lead non-exclusively, that exclusive buyer is no longer eligible for that recalculated revenue scenario. So I would say we do have some really good articles about post rejects and scenarios and how they address them. So we'll be sure to post those in our sidebar. as well as get those links out here after this webinar. But it is certainly something to think of from a lead seller's perspective here. So bring this to the leads tab, and again, you'll forgive the UI. This is our demo system. So we also do a lot of testing in here in addition to showing webinars and things like that. So just wanted to really come in here and look at, situations where, depending on what the distribution logic is, your lead logs may look different, all depending on the number of people that match, or oops. Wrong one. Number of matches and the distribution logic. So you'll see things like priority, rank, in best price or priority based distribution. And then you will see the best revenue scenarios sorry, forgive me. So you will see the individual calculation of every ping or matched filter. And then in best revenue scenarios, you will also see the recalculation of each lead as you receive post rejects. We had some, due to compliance, we clean our demo system. So I will make sure that we get a screenshot of what I was talking about in terms of the recalculation over to everybody as well. Right. Okay. Finishing back up on the lead distribution logic page. The earnings per lead. I mentioned that this was specific to inbound phone routing. There is one way to tell whether or not this would be applicable for you as a seller, is that we have a very good report called the EPL report. It is a, drill down report. This report essentially lays out the matching order of each call that comes into your system, attempts, successes, fails, rollbacks, those that did not meet minimum duration, and ultimately that revenue per attempt. So if you run this report and you see significant differences in the revenue per attempt, that may be an indication you want to explore that EPL logic so that you can start to optimize those calls coming into your system. Okay. I think that is everything I wanted to cover on this webinar. I'm always happy to cover more specific ones about specific distribution logics or use cases. Just wanted to get an overall explanation to you all. So I'd love to open it up for tickets, or excuse me, questions that you may have here. I'll take it by that one leaving that he didn't have any. All right, well, again, don't want to put anybody on the spot for a webinar. Happy to field individual questions from any attendees or anybody watching this video. So I'll give everybody one more shot. If not, we will go ahead and end this call. And I hope you all learned something today. Thank you.